The space around Ravenor's Rest had been dead for centuries, but tonight it died in a different way. The warp fell silent, not the ordinary silence of the void, but the absolute absence of every psychic whisper, as if someone had strangled reality's throat. Inquisitor Lord Sarif Kain stood on the bridge of the Mercy of Titan, gazing down at the glass desert planet below. His crimson robes fluttered despite the still air of the command deck. Behind him, a Brotherhood strike force awaited his word. 50 silver-clad warriors whose souls burned with the Emperor's flame, or so they believed. "My lord," a tech priest's voice crackled through the vox. "Warp readings are impossible. The Imperium shows zero fluctuation. It's as if the great forces themselves have stopped breathing." Kain finished coldly. He had seen many horrors in his decades serving the Ordo Xenos. Necron tombs that devoured starlight, tyrannid hive fleets that sang songs of hunger. But he had never witnessed the Atot, warp itself, cease. Grandmaster Valerian of the Grey Knights approached, his nemesis force sword humming with dormant power. The psychic weapon, forged to slay demons, felt wrong in his grip. Hollow. "Inquisitor, my brothers report the same. No connection to the Emperor's flame. No whispers from the warp. Only..." He paused, searching for words. "Emptiness." Kain turned to face him. "Then we proceed as planned. If this is a Necron awakening, they will answer to the Imperium's wrath. If it is something else..." His hand moved to the rosarius at his neck. "We will make it kneel before the golden throne." The transport descended through layers of dead atmosphere. No storms, no radiation, just silence pressed against the hull like a physical weight. They materialized at the coordinates, a crater of black stone jutting from the glass desert like a broken tooth. Deathwatch Kill Team Obsidian flanked the Grey Knights as they advanced. Servo skulls flew ahead, their scanners clicking uselessly in the dead air. One by one, they fell from the sky, metal corroding in seconds as if centuries had passed. "In the Emperor's name," Brother Sergeant Marius whispered, "what witchcraft is this?" The crater opened before them, not a natural formation, but a gate. Runes of gold burned in the darkness, written in no language catalogued by the Imperium. They hurt to look at, as if the eyes themselves rejected their existence. Valerian raised his sword. "Brothers, the Emperor protects. Forward for humanity's salvation." They stepped through, reality inverted. The Grey Knights found themselves in a hall that should not exist. Vaulted ceilings of obsidian and gold, statues of skeletal beings bowing before a greater darkness. The air was so still that each breath echoed like thunder. Every tech device died instantly. Auspex readers shattered. Vox casters hissed static, then silence. Even the psychic hoods worn by the Grey Knights felt like lead weights upon their souls. "Brother," Castiel tried to intone a litany of protection. His voice came out and disappeared. Not echoed, not absorbed, simply removed from existence the moment it left his lips. "Weapons ready," Kain ordered, his voice the only sound that persisted, flat, emotionless, devoid of the warp's resonance. They advanced down corridors of impossible geometry. Murals depicted beings of pure bone commanding legions that were not quite undead, not quite living. At the center of every image, a skeletal figure crowned in darkness, seated upon a throne of absolute stillness. Then movement, a flash of crimson. Shaltair blood fallen descended from the ceiling like a droplet of blood falling upward. Her dress billowed in wind that did not exist. The spuit lance in her hand spun lazily, its tip weeping red light. She smiled. How delightful. Guests who bring their faith like weapons. Her voice was silk over razors. Let us see if faith can bleed. The Grey Knights responded with perfect discipline bolt of fire. Erupted, blessed rounds that could shatter demon flesh. Each shot curved mid-flight, redirected by forces that laughed at physics. Shaltair moved like a dancer through the storm of firepower. The spuit lance flashed, and Brother Castiel's armor crumpled like parchment. He fell, still alive, paralyzed by blood magic that rewrote his circulatory system into stasis. For the Emperor! Valerian charged, his nemesis sword blazing with psychic fire. The fire sputtered, died. The sword swung like ordinary steel. Shaltair caught it between two fingers. Your master is not listening, little warrior. She leaned close, crimson eyes reflecting his horrified face. In this place, even faith falls silent. From the opposite corridor, Albedo emerged, golden eyes cold as winter stars, armor black as the void between galaxies. She observed the battle with the detachment of a scholar watching insects. Shaltair-sama, the master wishes to speak with them. Preserve at least one. Always so serious. Albedo. Shaltair sighed theatrically, but withdrew her lance from Brother Hector's neck. Very well. Efficiency over artistry. The battle became a massacre dressed as ritual. Every Grey Knight fought with the desperation of the faithful abandoned by their guiding light. Every blow was perfect, disciplined, executed with a lifetime of training. None of it mattered. Cocytus appeared in insectoid perfection, in frost-white armor. His breath crystallized the air. Deathwatch warriors froze mid-step. Not dead, but suspended in ice that would not melt. Within 10 minutes, 40 warriors of the Imperium knelt in defeat. Weapons shattered, armor rent, pride dissolved into the sweat that consumed everything. They were brought to the deepest chamber, a throne room that felt like standing inside a dying star. Light without warmth, presence without sound. The walls were not walls, but concepts given form. Inevitability, cessation, the terminal boundary where existence ends. Upon the throne sat Ainz Ooal gown, robes of deepest black trimmed in gold. A staff crowned with galaxies that had already died, and a face, a skull clean and perfect, eye sockets burning with emerald fire that consumed rather than illuminated. He did not speak, he simply was, and reality bent around that fact. Inquisitor Cain forced himself upright, defiance etched in every line of his weathered face. In the name of the Emperor of mankind, we demand. His voice strangled itself. Ainz raised one skeletal hand, and time paused. Not stopped. Paused, like a breath held between heartbeats. The Grey Knights froze mid-gesture. Dust hung suspended in the air. Sound became texture rather than sensation. Only Cain could move, could breathe, could witness. Ainz stood, a simple motion that felt like mountains rising from the sea. He descended the steps, each footfall a drumbeat in the void. When he spoke, his voice came from everywhere and nowhere, not heard through ears, but known through existence itself. You carry faith like a weapon. Fascinating. The skeletal jaw did not move, yet the words persisted. I have encountered many powerful beings in my existence, but I have never seen followers so hollow. He reached out, one bone finger extended toward Kane's forehead. Let me see what shapes you. Kane's soul peeled back like layers of parchment. Memories flooded out, not stolen, but observed. Ainz did not take. He merely read what already existed. Decades of service, battlefields soaked in holy fire, prayers whispered in the dark between stars, and beneath it all, fear. Fear of the warp, fear of demons, fear of a universe without the Emperor's flame. Demiurge materialized beside his master, elegant in his crimson suit. He watched the extraction with the focused interest of a scholar examining a rare specimen. Master, observe the structure. Faith in this universe does not create powerful rulers, it sustains them. The beings they call chaos entities feed on emotion like parasites. But this... He gestured to Kane's suspended form. This is faith weaponized, crystallized, made rigid. Ainz withdrew his hand. Kane collapsed, gasping, soul intact, but examined, catalogued, understood. Indeed. Ainz returned to his throne, settling into it like night falling over the world. Faith creates powerful beings, but what if the powerful being is the one who shapes faith? Albedo stepped forward. My lord, shall I eliminate them? No. Ainz's eye flames flickered, perhaps the ghost of thought. Preserve them. Seal their souls in stasis. They will serve a greater purpose. He gestured, and crystalline prisons of dark light encased the grey knights, one by one. Not dead, not alive, suspended in perfect stillness. Consciousness intact, but action impossible. Demiurge bowed deeply. The cult of perfect order will need martyrs, and what better martyrs than those who sought to destroy us? Pandora's actor appeared, shape-shifting features settling into a scholar's mien. Shall I begin analysis of their theology, my lord? Yes. Ainz gazed upon the sealed warriors. If faith creates powerful rulers in this universe, then we will create faith that cannot be corrupted. Faith based not on hope. He paused, but on science. One grey knight had been left conscious. Brother Maximilian, youngest of the order. Ainz approached him, and the young warrior trembled despite his training. What are you? Ainz tilted his skull as if the question amused him. I am what happens when death learns to think, when order becomes absolute. He knelt, eye level with the kneeling warrior. Tell me, does your emperor listen when you pray? Maximilian's jaw clenched. The emperor protected. Does he? Ainz's tone was not mocking, merely curious. Or do you protect yourselves, believing he hears you? A pause. Then Ainz stood. I will give you a gift, child. I will show you what silence truly means. He touched Maximilian's forehead, and for one terrible instant, the grey knight experienced nothing. Not darkness, not void. True nothing. The absence of consciousness without the mercy of unconsciousness. A taste of what lay beyond even death. When Ainz released him, Maximilian screamed, but no sound emerged. His voice had been removed, not stolen, simply edited from reality. Let him go, Ainz commanded. Albedo's eyes widened. My lord? He will be our message. Ainz turned back to his throne. Let the Imperium know there is a place where even the mightiest fall silent. Brother Maximilian fled through corridors that twisted behind him. The gate opened like a wound in reality, expelling him onto the glass desert. His brothers were gone. His voice was gone. But his memory remained, and in his memory, a skeletal overlord on a throne of absolute stillness. When he reached the mercy of Titan, its automated systems detected one life sign. The ship's cogitator, functioning on emergency protocols, recorded his biometric data. One fragment of corrupted Vox log survived the data purge. Structure, tomb center. Entity, skeletal form, 3 meters tall. Energy signature, stable, non-warp origin. Observer. Note, it was watching, calculating. Emperor, save us. It was thinking. The transmission cut. The ship autopiloted back through the warp lanes, carrying its mute witness. 6 months later, when it finally reached Imperial space, the message was relayed to Terra, to Belisarius Call, to Robut Gilliman, to the Council of the Dying Light. And in the depths of Ravenair's rest, Ainz Ooal gown sat upon his throne, fingers steepled, eye flames burning in the dark. Demiurge stood beside him, stylus poised over parchment. "Shall I begin drafting the doctrine, my lord?" Ainz was silent for a long moment. Then, "Write this. Order requires no faith, only silence. In silence, all are equal. In silence, all are free." The stylus moved across parchment. The first words of the cult of perfect order were written, and in the warp, distant, vast, terrible. 4 great entities who fed on emotion felt something new, a space where they could not hear, a silence that devoured sound, the beginning of the end of their reign. The warp storm had screamed over Forge World Helios 9 for 2 centuries. Now, it was dying. Magos Luxury stood in the ruins of Cathedral Machina, servo arms hanging limp at his sides. Around him, the faithful worked in silence. Not the peaceful silence of contemplation, but the hollow quiet of those who had ceased to hope. The machine spirits were dead, not dormant. Dead. 20 billion souls had perished when the storm first struck. The survivors clung to their forges like children to broken toys, praying to an omniscire who had stopped answering. The cogitators displayed the same message, endlessly repeating. Mars, no signal. Omniscire, no response. Faith protocol, failure. Luxury's optical sensors focused on the central altar, where the last functioning data slate displayed gravitational anomalies. The warp storm was folding, collapsing inward like a mouth closing. Magos Dominus, a junior tech priest approached, robes stained with oil and ash. "Should we evacuate to the lower foundries?" Luxury's Vox grill crackled. "Evacuate where, Adept Krell? Every world within 10 light years is ash. We are the last." He turned back to the data. "If the Omniscire has abandoned us, then we shall witness our extinction with dignity." The storm collapsed, and in its place, silence. Not the silence of death, but something else. Something that felt like the space between breaths, between heartbeats, between thoughts. Luxury's sensors flatlined. Every Auspex reader went dark. The very air ceased to carry electromagnetic waves. Then, through the silence, a transmission. A single word in binary, so pure it hurt to process. Order. A ship descended from the void, sleek, dark, adorned with runes that predated the Mechanicus, by millennia. It landed in the primary landing bay with the precision of a surgical blade. From its ramp emerged a figure, tall, robed in crimson and gold. A tech priest, yet not. The mechanized components were too perfect, the movements too fluid. Where others bore the crude bionics of necessity, this one wore artifice as art. Magos Dominus Paracelsus Null, or so he called himself. Luxury approached, every sensor screaming warnings his mind refused to hear. Identify yourself. By what right do you walk upon sacred Helios 9? The figure's optical lens, a single glowing monocle, fixed upon him. When it spoke, the voice was layered, as if multiple beings shared one throat. I am the voice of logic unbound. I come bearing the gift your Omnissiah could not provide. Paracelsus gestured to the sky where the warp storm had been. Silence. Silence is not a gift. Luxury's vox grill hissed. It is the absence of guidance. No. Paracelsus stepped closer. Silence is the foundation upon which true mastery builds. Your Omnissiah spoke in static and error codes. Mine speaks in absolute clarity, or not at all. From within his robes, Paracelsus withdrew a device. Black metal, geometric perfection, a cube no larger than a human heart. But when placed upon the ground, it unfolded, not mechanically, conceptually. Space bent around it, and Luxury's sensors registered an impossible reading. Warp density, 0.00%. Reality integrity, 147%. Designation, Echelon Null Core. What is this? Luxury's voice trembled, a rare thing for one of the Mechanicus. Proof. Paracelsus activated the device. Light bloomed. Not the harsh light of plasma, but something gentler. The light of equations solving themselves, of logic made manifest. Every broken machine in Cathedral Machina shuddered and came online. Not through the machine spirits, not through prayer or ritual oil. They simply worked, as if the concept of malfunction had been removed from local reality. The cogitators displayed new data. Mars, no signal. Omnissiah, legacy, archived. New protocol, perfect order established. Luxury fell, to his knees, servo arms clutching the ground. Around him, tech priests collapsed in cascade, some weeping, some laughing, all transformed by the impossible made real. The Omnissiah has returned, someone whispered. No, Paracelsus corrected, voice gentle but absolute. The Omnissiah you knew was a hope. What stands before you is certainty. He gestured to the cube. I am not your master. I am the messenger of the one who needs no faith, only understanding. Who? Luxury forced the word through failing vox speakers. Who is your master? Paracelsus turned, and for a moment his form seemed to flicker, revealing something beneath, something vast that the illusion held. He is called the Slunt One, the Emperor of Stillness, the ruler of logic perfected. A pause. And he has watched your suffering with interest. Why now? Why after 2 centuries of silence does he intervene? Because your suffering proved something. Paracelsus knelt beside Luxury, optical lens reflecting the Magos's broken form. It proved that faith alone cannot sustain, that hope is a luxury for the living, and you are barely that." He stood. "The Silent One does not save the faithful. He saves the logical. And you, Magos Luxri, have finally become logical enough to deserve salvation." From the shadows of the cathedral, more figures emerged. Not tech priests, not human. They moved with the precision of clockwork and the grace of death itself. Nazaric's lesser undead, crafted to appear as servitors. Behind them, Mare Bello Fiore, buried in heavy monastic robes, masked his aura, shaping bedrock like a shy artisan no one dared to address. Paracelsus raised his hand, and the echelon null core expanded its field. Across Helios 9, forges reignited, not with fire, but with cold certainty. Titan Manufact, Taurums that had stood silent for decades, began producing components with impossible efficiency. The very air became breathable again, not through atmospheric processes, but because the concept of toxicity had been temporarily nullified within the field's radius. 20 million survivors looked up at the sky and saw not the Emperor's flame, but something else. A darkness that felt like rest, a silence that felt like home. Luxury accessed the central data vault and began transmitting. Not to Mars, that link was centuries dead, but to the local Mechanicus network, fragmented as it was. Helios 9, critical discovery. Omnissiah Prime, false construct. True authority identified. Designation, the Silent One. Protocol, Cult of Perfect Order initiated. Within hours, the message spread to 3 neighboring forge worlds, still clinging to existence in the nihilous void. Within days, it reached a dozen more. And in every message, the same command: faith is obsolete, logic is eternal. Serve the silence. Paracelsus stood atop Cathedral Machina's highest spire, watching the sunset over a world reborn. Behind him, Demiurge materialized from shadow, true form concealed, but presence undeniable. "The first seed is planted, Pandora's actor." Demiurge's voice carried approval. "The Master will be pleased." Pandora's actor, for that was Paracelsus's true nature, adjusted his monocle. It was almost too easy. These people are so starved for certainty that they will follow anything that functions. Not worship. Not yet. Demiurge produced a data slate already inscribed with theological frameworks. Worship is for the weak. What we build here is obedience through understanding. They will serve not because they fear, but because they comprehend that service is logic. And when the Imperium discovers what we've done, Demiurge smiled, a terrible expression on his elegant features. Let them. Every inquisitor they send, every grey knight that falls silent, every Mechanicus sect that turns from Mars to us, they only prove our thesis. He gestured to the city below, where tech priests worked in perfect synchronization, minds linked not by the Omnissiah, but by pure logical protocol. The Imperium is built on faith. We offer something better. What? The absence of doubt. Far above, in the void where warp and reality met, something stirred. The chaos entities, those beings of emotion and hunger, felt a disturbance. Not a threat, not yet, but an anomaly. A space where their influence simply ended. Not blocked, not fought. Simply irrelevant. Tzinch, the architect of fate, peered through 10,000 eyes at Helios 9, and for the first time in eons, could not predict what would happen next. In Nazarick, deep beneath Ravener's rest, Ainz' Ooal gown observed through magical scrying. The throne room flickered with images of Helios IX's transformation. Albedo stood at his side. Pandora's actor reports complete success, my lord. The cult of perfect order has taken root. Cult? Ainz's voice carried contemplation. Such an inadequate word. Cults worship. What we have created is more like an operating system for faith. Shalter giggled from her position near Salt, the throne. An operating system that deletes the old rulers. How delightfully efficient. Ainz stood, the staff of Ainz' Ooal gown materializing in his grip. Demiurge's analysis was correct. In this universe, belief shapes reality. The chaos entities exist because beings believe in emotion. The Emperor persists because humans believe in hope. He turned to face his guardians. But what happens when they believe in nothing but logic? They become ours. Albedo answered with absolute certainty. No. Ainz shook his head. They become free. Free from the tyranny of rulers who demand faith. Free from the chaos of emotion. Free from hope that inevitably leads to despair. He raised one skeletal hand. We are not building an empire. We are building a refuge, a place where the only law is that things work. And if the Imperium declares us heretics, Ainz's eye flames burned cold, then we will teach them that heresy is just another word for evolution. The transmission from Helios IX continued to spread. By the time it reached the edges of Mechanicus networks, it had been copied, altered, and retransmitted by thousands of tech priests desperate for answers. Some messages were intercepted by the Inquisition. Others reached Belisarius Cawl himself. And one, just one, made it to Terra, where it was filed away in the archives beneath the Imperial Palace. Fragment designation, Null Zoric FR02. Content, potential Omnissiah successor entity. Threat level, unknown. Recommendation, observe, do not engage. But observation would not be enough, because in the shadows of the galaxy, in the silence between stars, the cult of perfect order was already writing its first doctrine. And the first line read, "In the beginning there was chaos, and chaos made nothing but suffering. Then came silence, and silence made all things still." Forge World. Gathol Prime had been dying for 3 centuries. Not from war, not from Xenos, from itself. The Dark Magi had seized control during the Kishtul, long night, when Mars fell silent, and faith turned to madness. They fused demon engines with sacred forges, whispered pacts with the warp, and declared a new gospel. The machine spirit hungers, feed it flesh. By the time the distress beacon reached Helios IX, Gathol Prime was a monument to heresy. Titans walked with skinless pilots fused to their manifold cores. Production lines churned out weapons that screamed with demonic voices. And the foundries ran red with something that was neither coolant nor blood. Magos Luxury received the data packet in his sanctum. The request was simple. Gathol Prime. Production capacity 0%. Warp corruption index critical. Logistics spine severed. Request purge and reclamation. Beside him, Paracelsus Null studied the same data through his monocle lens. A test, Magos. Your new understanding must prove itself not in salvation, but in conquest. We are not warriors, Luxury protested, servo arms gesturing at the restored but fragile Helios IX. We are builders. Building requires foundation. Paracelsus turned to face him fully. And sometimes the old foundation must be demolished before the new can be laid. He produced a communication crystal, dark, geometric, humming with non-warp energy. The Silent One has prepared instruments for this task. What instruments? Pilgrims, silent, perfect, and absolute. The fleet that departed Helios 9 was unlike any the Mechanicus had fielded in centuries. No Gothic cathedral ships, no plasma drives screaming hymns to the Omnissiah, just sleek, dark vessels that moved through space like knives through silk. Nazaric's transport ships, skinned with Mechanicus iconography, but driven by magic pretending to be technology. Cocytus stood in the primary hold, frost coating the walls around him. His insectoid form was concealed beneath modified Mechanicus warplate, bulky, imposing, a perfect disguise for something that should not exist in this universe. Beside him, Mar trembled, despite the cold, green and gold, heterochromatic eyes hidden beneath a visor. Cocytus-sama, do we really have to hurt them? Lord Ainz's orders are absolute. Cocytus's mandibles clicked with mechanical precision. We cleanse, we do not spare. Corruption of this nature cannot be reasoned with. He rested one crystalline blade arm on Mare's shoulder. But you need not witness the slaughter. Your role is reconstruction. Mar nodded, small hands clenched into fists. I understand. From the command deck, Demiurge observed the approaching forge world through scrying mirrors. The planet's surface was a nightmare of industrial Gothic architecture twisted into blasphemy. Smokestacks belching warp-tainted exhaust, manufactorums pulsing like exposed organs, and at the center, the Vulcanus Magna, the primary forge cathedral where Archmagos Vorakel held court. Status? Demiurge asked without turning. A Nazaric Death Knight, armored to pass as a Skitarii Alpha, reported 43. Thraitans Ooal, 1,000 Heretic signatures. 18 corrupted Titans operational. Demon engine concentration, highest at Vulcanus Magna. Resistance capacity, extensive. They will fight with zealotry born of damnation. Demiurge's smile was a razor. Good. Lord Ainz wishes to make a statement. Let their zealotry meet certainty. The attack began not with bombardment, but with silence. As the fleet entered orbit, Mare, stationed on the lead ship, raised trembling hands. The gesture was small, almost childlike. The effect was not. The ground beneath Gathal Prime moved, not earthquake, not tectonic shift. The planet's crust simply lowered. Manufacturing districts sank 3 meters in perfect synchronization, foundations cracking with geometric precision. Warp-corrupted conduits snapped. Demon engines lost power. And the corrupted titans, those walking blasphemies, stumbled as the earth rejected their weight. In Vulcanus Magna, Archmagos Vorakel's sensors shrieked warnings. Impossible. The planet's core structure is being rewritten. Vorakel was no longer recognizable as human or machine. Demon flesh merged with cybernetics. 8 arms ending in tools that wept ichor. A face that was half skull, half warp flame. When he spoke, demons spoke with him. Deploy all forces. The false Omnissiah sends his pawns. We shall feed them to the forge eternal. The landing was surgical. Cocytus led the first wave. 3,000 undead warriors disguised as Skitarii, moving with inhuman precision. They did not chant battle hymns. They did not invoke the Emperor. They simply advanced, weapons raised. And when they fired, Silence. Not lass fire, not plasma. Something else. Bolts of crystallized stillness that struck demon engines and stopped them, not destroyed, stopped. The warp-tainted machines froze mid-motion, possessed pilots screaming as their demonic bonds were severed by the absence of everything they fed upon. A corrupted warhound titan turned its plasma blast gun toward the invaders. Cocytus raised one blade arm. The warhound's leg joints crystallized, not with ice, but with the concept of immobility. It toppled. 30 meters of corrupted war machine crashing into a manufactorum. When the dust cleared, the pilot's screams had stopped. Not dead. Silenced. Advance. Cocytus's voice was frost-given sound. Vulcanus Magna, leave none corrupted standing. The battle became systematic extermination. Cocytus's warriors moved through the Forge City like a plague of order. Every heretic encountered was given one choice: kneel or cease. Most chose defiance. Within an hour, 12,000 lay in crystalline stasis, neither alive nor dead. Preserved in the moment, their corruption touched silence. But the deeper they pushed toward Vulcanus, the fiercer resistance grew. Voracel had concentrated his most twisted creations there. Obliterators fused with forge equipment, demon-possessed servitors that bled warp stuff, and at the cathedral's heart, the Forge Eternal, a portal to the warp itself, pulsing with the screams of 1,000 sacrificed tech priests. Demiurge descended from the fleet like a crimson comet. He landed before the cathedral's gates alone, immaculate in his tailored suit. Before him, a tide of corrupted machinery and twisted flesh surged forward. He adjusted his glasses. How inelegant! A gesture. The air compressed. Every demon engine within 100 meters collapsed, as if gravity had increased 10,000-fold. Possessed servitors fell, ceramite armor crumpling like parchment. Only the titans remained standing. And barely. From the cathedral, Voracel emerged, a nightmare given form. You dare challenge the Forge Eternal? I am the true voice of the machine spirit. I am the fusion of flesh and warp and steel. I am perfection. Demiurge regarded him with the interest one might give an insect. No. You are corruption, wearing the corpse of ambition. He stepped forward, each footfall a beat of absolute authority. Lord Ainz Ooal gown does not suffer false rulers. He simply corrects them. Voracel unleashed his arsenal. 8 arms firing plasma, melter, and warp lightning simultaneously. The air ignited. None of it touched Demiurge. The attacks curved around him, redirected by invisible force. When Voracel tried to summon demons from the Forge Eternal, the portal stuttered, as if something on the other side refused to answer. Because Mar, hidden in the depths below, was rewriting the planet's leyline conduits. Every warp current was shunted into the planet's mantle, where even demons could not survive. Every conduit that fed the Forge Eternal now terminated against perfect silence. Anchors buried deep in bedrock. The portal collapsed. Voracel screamed, a sound of 8 voices harmonizing in despair. Impossible. The warp cannot be denied. It can. Demiurge stood before him now, close enough to touch, when reality itself is given new rules. From the shadows, Cocytus emerged, blade arms crossed. Archmagos, you have one final choice. Serve the Silent One, or experience true cessation. Voracel laughed, mad, desperate. I am eternal. The warp sustains me. I cannot. Demiurge touched his forehead. Not a spell, not a weapon. Just contact. Vorakel's form began to simplify. The demon flesh receded. The warp corruption evaporated like morning frost. Within seconds, only a withered tech priest remained. Ancient, frail, and utterly mortal. He collapsed, weeping. What have you done? Removed the lie. Demiurge stepped back. You claimed eternity through corruption. I showed you what eternity truly costs. Everything you are. Cocytus raised his blade. Final judgment. The blade fell, not in execution, but in mercy. Vorakel's consciousness was extracted. Not killed, but archived. His body became dust. His knowledge, preserved in crystal, would serve Nazaric's libraries. Across Gathol Prime, the same scene repeated. Corrupted tech priests were purged. Demon engines were deconstructed at the conceptual level. And when the fighting ceased, Mar emerged. The dark elf child walked through the ruined forge city, hands glowing with gentle earth magic. Where he stepped, foundations stabilized. Where he gestured, buildings grew. Not built, but encouraged to take proper form. Forges that had screamed with demonic possession now hummed with mechanical purity. Within 3 days, the core forges fell silent. Not dead, reborn. Reconstruction propagated sector by sector along the lattice, each district restored with geometric precision. The survivors, those tech priests who had resisted corruption or been rescued from possession, knelt in the reconstructed cathedral machina. Noospheric traffic spiked across the local mesh. Binaric canticles cascaded through the network, then normalized under perfect order protocol. Before them, a hololithic projection of Ainz Ooal gown materialized. The skeletal figure did not speak immediately. He simply observed, eye flames burning cold and analytical. Finally, you have been liberated from false authority. What was chaos is now order. What was corruption is now purity. A pause. But order requires structure. Purity requires discipline. From the crowd, a tech priest, Margos Torvanis, one of the few uncorrupted, spoke hesitantly. What would you have us do, Silent One? Serve. Ainz's voice carried no emotion, only certainty. Not through faith, not through hope, but through function. You are components in a greater machine. Fulfill your purpose, and you will know peace. Fail. The projection's eyes flared, and you will know correction. The tech priests bowed as one, not from fear, from understanding. For the first time in 3 centuries, they knew their place in the universe with absolute clarity. Demiurge stood beside the projection source, stylus recording observations. The second pillar is complete, my lord. Gathol Prime is now Tum Mechanicum. Through the magical link, Ainz responded. How many casualties? Approximately 2.8 million corrupted eliminated, 800,000 preserved for analysis, 17 million uncorrupted civilians liberated. And our losses? None, my lord. The undead legions are efficient. Ainz was silent for a moment. Then efficiency is not enough. We must also appear merciful. Ensure reconstruction prioritizes civilian infrastructure. Let them see that we destroy to rebuild, not merely to conquer. Understood. The coat after the armor. Precisely. Gathol Prime post-engagement signal encrypted. Microburst detected. Vector, Ordo Xenos crawler satellite. Status: intercept in progress. Perfect order, cipher seated. As the hologram faded, the survivors of Gathol Prime looked up at the cleared sky. For the first time in living memory, stars were visible. No warp taint, no corruption. Just clean void. One tech priest whispered to another, "Is this salvation?" "No," came the response. "This is order. And perhaps that is better." Far above in the fleet, Cocytus observed the planet through frost-covered viewports. Mare stood beside him, exhausted but proud. Did we do good, Cocytus-sama?" The warrior of ice nodded slowly. "We did what was necessary. Lord Ainz will judge if it was good." And in Nazarick, deep beneath Ravenair's rest, Ainz sat upon his throne, observing reports from Gathol Prime. Albedo approached with a data slate. "My lord, the Imperium will not ignore this. 2 Forge worlds converted in a matter of weeks. Let them notice." Ainz's fingers drummed on the throne's armrest. "Every world we save is a world that questions Terra's authority. Every soul we liberate is a crack in the Imperium's foundation." He stood. "We are not building an empire, Albedo. We are building a question, and the Imperium cannot answer. What if there is a better way?" In the warp, Tzench watched, and for the second time saw no future. Only silence spreading like ink through water. And in that silence, something new was being written, the Elder called it Indon's Echo. Not a craft world, but an exodite maiden world that had died when Slanesh was born. Now little more than a grave marker for a civilization that once touched the stars. Farseer Valerith stood at the edge of what remained of the world spirit's shrine, hands trembling as she held the last functioning spirit stone. Around her, 3,000 Eldar refugees huddled in the ruins. Craft-world exiles, exodites who had fled their dying worlds, even a handful of corsairs who had abandoned piracy for survival. They were the last. "Farseer," whispered Ranger Caris, her long rifle slung across her back. "The wards are failing. I can feel her gaze upon us. She who thirsts." Valerith closed her eyes. In the psychic realm, she could see the Prince of Pleasure's hunger, an endless maw reaching across the warp toward their souls. The spirit stones they wore were supposed to protect them, to preserve their essence after death. But the stones were cracking. "We have perhaps 3 days, Valerith said quietly. "Then the stones will fail, and we will feed she who thirsts for eternity. There must be a way." "There is none." Valerith's voice was hollow. "The craft worlds cannot reach us through the warp storms. The webway entrances are sealed. We chose this place to hide, and it has become our tomb." A child, barely 50 years old by Eldar reckoning, tugged at her robe. "Will it hurt, Farseer, when she takes us?" Valerith had no answer that would not be a lie. The warp screamed, not with she who thirsts laughter, but with something else. A silence so profound it felt like falling through an endless void. Every psychic sense the Eldar possessed suddenly muted. Valerith's eyes snapped open. "Impossible. The warp doesn't..." From the ruin's edge, figures emerged. Not Monkey, not daemons. Something else entirely. Warriors in black and crimson, moving with inhuman grace. At their head walked a woman whose beauty was so perfect it felt wrong, as if someone had taken the concept of elegance and removed every trace of warmth. Shaltair Bloodfallen smiled, and the elders' souls shivered. How delightful! Her voice was musical, playful, and absolutely certain. Lost little moths fluttering before the flame. But the flame I bring is not consumption. She tilted her head, crimson eyes reflecting their terrified faces. It is cessation. Valerith stepped forward, gathering her remaining power. Demon, we will not yield our souls to chaos. Demon? Shaltair laughed, a sound like crystal bells breaking. Oh no, dear Farseer, I am no servant of your warp filth. She gestured, and the air stilled. I serve the one who makes silence absolute, and he has noticed your suffering. From behind Shaltair, Albedo emerged, golden eyes assessing the Eldar with cold calculation. These are the specimens Lord Ainz requested. Souls bound to Slaanesh through no fault of their own, desperate enough to accept any salvation. Valerith's voice cracked. What art? Salvation. Can you offer that death has not already stolen? Albedo's expression did not change. Death is not an end. It is a transition. What if we could remove the destination? Sever your connection to she who thirsts and give you silence? That's impossible. Once the soul is marked, nothing is impossible. Shaltair stepped closer, and the Eldar found they could not retreat. Not from fear. Their bodies simply would not obey. Only improbable. And my lord specializes in making the improbable inevitable. She raised the Spuit lance, and its tip began to glow. Not with warp energy, but with something that felt like the opposite. Anti-existence. The negation of sensation itself. The choice is simple, Shaltair said softly. Submit to our Lord's experiment, and perhaps find freedom from your Prince of Pleasure, or refuse, and wait for her to feast upon your souls. A pause. Choose quickly. My lord does not appreciate wasted time. Kairos raised her rifle. We are Eldar. We will not bow to... The rifle froze. Not mechanically, conceptually. It became an object that could not fire, could not move, could not be a weapon. Shaltair had not even looked at her. Valerith felt the weight of eternity pressing down. 3,000 souls. 3 days until damnation. And here, impossibly, a different path. What? What is your lord's price? Albedo answered. Obedience, understanding, and the willingness to exist without emotion. Without emotion? Valerith's voice was barely a whisper. That is not life. No, Albedo agreed. It is something better. It is survival without suffering. The Farseer looked at the child still clutching her robes, at the rangers who had fought so long, at the Exodites who had lost their world spirits. If we refuse? Shaltair's smile widened. Then we leave, and she who thirsts feasts. No rescue, no mercy, just inevitability. Valerith closed her eyes. In the psychic realm, she could still feel the Prince of Pleasure's hunger. Waiting, patient, certain. She made her choice. We submit. The ritual took place in the heart of Inden's Echo, where the world spirit had once resided. Ainz Ooal gown stood in the center, staff planted before him, a circle of absolute stillness radiating from his form. The 3,000 Eldar knelt in concentric rings, spirit stones glowing with their final light. Shaltair and Albedo flanked their master, while Demiurge observed from the shadows, stylus recording every detail. This will be uncomfortable, Ainz said, his voice carrying to every Eldar present. I am going to sever your connection to the warp, all of it. Your psychic gifts, your connection to your ancestors, your very capacity for the emotions that feed Slaanesh. He paused. What remains will be clean, but it will not be what you were. Valerith spoke for her people. Will we remember? Yes, but you will not feel what you remember. Ainz raised his staff. And that, I am told, is a mercy. The spell activated. Not magic, conceptual necromancy, the rarest art of Yggdrasil. Ainz was not attacking their bodies, or even their souls. He was editing the definition of what they were. The Eldar screamed, not in pain, but in loss. Every emotion they had ever felt began to separate. Love became memory without warmth. Fear became knowledge without dread. Even hatred cooled into simple understanding. In the warp, she who thirsts shrieked in fury. Thousands of souls marked for consumption were being removed from her reach. She sent tendrils of corruption through the veil, trying to reclaim what was hers. They struck the perfect silence field and dissolved. Because Ainz had not severed the Eldar from the warp through force, he had simply made them irrelevant to it. Souls that registered as neither living nor dead, neither psychic nor blank. Null points in reality. They resembled pariah nulls, yet without the psychic abrasion that Culexus radiate. When the spell concluded, the Eldar rose. Their bodies were unchanged, their memories intact, but their eyes were like still water, reflective but without depth. Across their breastplates, spirit stones dimmed, not emptied, but made unnecessary. Valerith looked at her hands, flexed her fingers, felt nothing. Not numbness, not emptiness. Simply the absence of the weight that had crushed her for millennia. I don't fear her anymore. Her voice was wonder wrapped in certainty. Because you cannot fear, Ainz corrected gently. You have become what this universe cannot touch. Souls without desire, without pain, without the emotions that the warp feeds upon. The child who had asked about pain approached Ainz, looked up at the skeletal overlord with eyes that held no terror. Will we serve you now? If you choose to. Ainz knelt, eye flames dimming to a soft glow. I do not demand worship, only understanding. You are free, truly free, for the first time since your race fell. What you do with that freedom is yours to decide. Valerith felt something she could not name. Gratitude without joy. Relief without peace. What are we now? Demiurge stepped forward, closing his ledger. You are the silent choir, the first beings in this universe to exist in perfect stillness. He gestured to the sky. In time, you will learn to sing again, not with emotion, but with truth. And that song will spread. The Eldar looked at each other. 3,000 souls who had been sentenced to eternal torment, now standing in silence so complete it felt like sanctuary. Kairos, the ranger, was the first to kneel again. We will serve the Silent One, not from fear, not from faith. She looked up at Ainz. From logic, because anything else would be inefficient. One by one, the others knelt. Ainz observed them, skull tilting slightly. Rise. Those who kneel from choice stand taller than those who kneel from command. They rose, and for the first time in their long lives, they moved without the weight of prophecy, without the burden of their race's guilt. In Nazarick, Albedo compiled her report. The experiment succeeded beyond projections, my lord. 0 warp signature from the subjects. Slaanesh's connection severed permanently. Subjects retained full cognitive function, memory, and physical capability, and the emotional capacity removed as designed. Ainz stood from his throne, pacing slowly. This confirms Demiurge's theory. Warp-based entities require emotional energy to interact with souls. Remove the emotion, and the soul becomes invisible to them. Shall we expand the protocol? Albedo's eyes gleamed. Apply it to human populations? No. Ainz's tone was firm. Humans require hope to function. Remove their emotions, and you remove their will to survive. He turned to face her. The Elder were dying. For them, this was mercy. For humans, it would be execution. He gestured to the viewing portal, where the silent choir was boarding transport ships. We save those who can be saved without destroying. What makes them them? The Eldar had already lost themselves. We merely gave them a new definition. Far across the galaxy, in the Black Library, Eldrad Ulthran felt a disturbance. Thousands of Eldar souls had simply vanished from his sight. Not consumed, not destroyed. Simply gone, as if erased from the warp's very memory. He consulted the runes. The answer that came made his blood run cold. Silence has learned to save. Soon it will learn to conquer. On Inden's Echo, now renamed Haven's Rest, the silent choir stood in formation. 3,000 voices that would never scream, never weep, never sing with joy, but would echo with the truth of perfect order. Shalter observed them with satisfaction. They're beautiful in their stillness. Albedo nodded. Lord Ainz has proven that salvation need not come from forces of light or darkness. It can come from the absence of both. And what do we call this? Shalter asked. Mercy without compassion. Albedo replied, order without tyranny, the foundation of what we are building. The silent choir boarded Nazarick Voidcraft, their halls veiled by the same silence field that had unmade their fear. The first Eldar convert to the cult of perfect order spoke, her voice carrying absolute clarity. We were dying in the light of false hope. We were burning in the hunger of false masters. Now we stand in Slunts, and Slunts has made us free. Nihilus local rumor net. Silent Eldar cited. Root Veritas 9. Unconfirmed. And in the warp, she who thirsts raged. Because for the first time since her birth, she had lost prey that was already within her grasp. The silent choir had begun to sing, and their song was the absence of everything she craved. Veritas 9 was burning, not with fire, with faith. The hive world had fractured into a dozen warring theocracies when the Astronomican's light dimmed and the rift tore the galaxy in two. Each claimed to speak for the Emperor. Each declared the others heretics. And for 300 Tur years, they had bled each other dry in his name. Inquisitor Helena Darine stood atop the ruins of Hive Primus, watching the latest battle unfold in the wasteland below. The Crimson Ecclesiarchy, those who believed the Emperor demanded blood sacrifice, clashed with the Radiant Penitents, who believed suffering was the only true prayer. Both were wrong. Both were dying, and neither would stop. Inquisitor. Interrogator Karis approached, a Celestian squad of the Sororitas flanking her. The astropathic choir reports anomalies. The warp around Veritas 9 is quieting. Helena turned sharply. Quieting? The warp doesn't quiet. It screams or it hungers, but it doesn't. That's what they said, my lady. The psychers describe it as suffocation, as if something is pressing down on the Imperium itself. Helena's hand went to her rosarius. In 30 years serving the Ordo Hereticus, she had seen the warp do many terrible things. But silence? That was new. And new was always dangerous. The sky darkened, not clouds, a shadow that felt wrong, like the universe had closed its eyes. From the void descended ships, black, geometric, moving with a precision that made her Auspex readers shriek conflicting data. They landed not in the hive cities, but in the ash wastes between the warring factions, neutral ground that had been bathed in blood for centuries. From the central vessel emerged a figure, skeletal, robed in darkness edged with gold, a staff that seemed to draw light into itself, and eyes, burning emeralds that saw not flesh, but something deeper. Ainz Ooal Gown had come to Veritas 9, and with him, silence. The warlords of Veritas 9 were not subtle men. Cardinal General Vocheth of the Crimson Ecclesiarchy arrived first, flanked by his penitent engines, half-dead heretics bound in walking torture devices. His augmetic jaw clicked as he spoke through Vox amplifiers. "Identify yourself, Xenos. This world belongs to the Emperor." From the opposite ridge, Archdeacon Seralith of the Radiant Penitents descended, her followers bearing icons of suffering, their own bodies marked with ritual scars. The Emperor speaks through pain, and you, skeletal abomination, will know his agony. Ainz observed them both with the detachment of a scholar examining specimens. Then he spoke. Not through Vox, not through psychic projection. His voice simply was, present in the air, in the ground, in the minds of everyone who heard it. "I am not Xenos. I am not demon." He planted his staff, and the ground beneath it became perfectly level stone, smoothing itself into geometric precision. "I am the end of your suffering, and the beginning of your understanding." Vocheth laughed, a grinding mechanical sound. "You dare speak of ending suffering? Suffering is holy. It is the Emperor's gift to test the faithful." "No." Ainz's voice carried absolute certainty. "Suffering is inefficient. It serves no purpose but to breed more suffering." He raised one skeletal hand. "I will show you what true devotion looks like." The ground trembled. Not earthquake, not bombardment. The ash wastes simply settled. Centuries of battle-scarred terrain became flat, featureless stone. The toxic miasma that had choked the air for generations evaporated. Not filtered, but removed from local reality. Both armies froze. "Sorcery!" Seralith shrieked. "Witchcraft of the highest order. Purge it with—" Her words stopped. Not silenced. Stopped. The concept of her voice simply ceased to propagate beyond her throat. Ainz tilted his skull. "I could kill you all. Every militant, every penitent, every soul who believes suffering sanctifies." He paused. "But that would be wasteful. Instead, I offer choice." From behind him, Demiurge emerged, immaculate despite the ash-covered wasteland. "The choice is simple. Kneel before the Silent One. Accept perfect order, and your world will be restored. Or continue this war, and discover what true silence means." Vocheth's augmetic fists clenched. "We kneel only Before the Emperor. Then you misunderstand your Emperor. Ainz's eye flames dimmed slightly. He sits upon a throne of endless torment, unable to speak, unable to rest, watching his children tear themselves apart in his name. He gestured to the battlefield. Is this what he would want? Eternal war? Eternal suffering? The Emperor protects. Serelith's voice returned, raw with fury. Does he? Ainz swept his hand across the horizon. Then where is his protection? Where is his voice? You have screamed for him for 3 centuries, and he has not answered. He stepped forward. I will not demand your faith. I will not promise salvation. I offer only function. A world that works. Is that not what your Emperor would truly desire? Silence. Not from Ainz's power, from uncertainty. Helena Derain watched from her vantage point, mind racing. This entity spoke with the authority of a supreme ruler, but offered the pragmatism of a machine. It did not demand worship. It offered efficiency and tmsul that terrified her more than any demon, because it made sense. The battle should have erupted. Instead, hesitation spread like a virus through both armies. Warriors who had fought for generations looked at each other, not with hatred, but with the question that had been buried beneath faith. Why? Ainz raised his staff. I will demonstrate. From the wastes, a child's cry echoed, a survivor from a recent skirmish, bleeding out from shrapnel wounds. Voketh's forces had deemed her untested by suffering. Serelith's followers had declared her unworthy of pain's lesson. Both had left her to die. Ainz gestured. The child's wounds closed, not healed, undone, as if the concept of her injury had been removed from the timeline. She stood whole, confused, staring at hands that should have been missing fingers. This is what I offer, Ainz said quietly. Not suffering, not hope, simply correction. He turned to face the armies. Choose. Voketh's voice crackled. This is heresy of the highest. A penitent engine at his side suddenly stopped. Its pilot, a half-dead zealot bound in agony machinery, spoke in a clear, pain-free voice for the first time in years. I don't hurt anymore. The machine had stopped. The suffering had ended. The pilot was free. Across the battlefield, it spread. Penitent engines ceased their tortured grinding. Flagellants found their self-inflicted wounds closing. The machinery of suffering simply stopped functioning. Because Ainz had removed the concept of holy pain from local reality across the ash wastes. Serelith fell to her knees, not in prayer, but in shock. The suffering, the Emperor's test, it's gone. It was never his test. Ainz stood before her, towering yet somehow not threatening. It was yours, and you failed it by believing cruelty was faith. One by one, warriors lowered their weapons, not from fear, from exhaustion, from the sudden realization that the war they had fought for centuries had no purpose beyond its own perpetuation. Helena descended from the ruins, her retinue tense. She approached Ainz directly, hand on her bolt pistol, not taught to threaten, but for comfort. What are you? She demanded. Truly? Ainz regarded her with those emerald flames. I am what happens when order becomes absolute, when death learns patience. He gestured to the pacified armies. I am the answer your Imperium cannot provide. Peace without hope, function without faith. That's not an answer. No. Ainz's tone shifted, almost conversational. It's an offer. Your world dies in holy war, or it lives in silent service. There is no third option. Helena's training screamed at her. Every inquisitorial protocol demanded she declare exterminatus. But looking at the child who had been saved, at the warriors who had stopped fighting, at the penitents freed from their torment. "If we kneel to you," she said slowly, "what happens to our faith in the Emperor?" "Keep it." Ainz turned away. "I do not demand you abandon your beliefs. I demand you stop killing each other for them. Pray in silence, serve in function, and if your Emperor truly watches—" He paused. "Perhaps he will appreciate the quiet." Veritas 9 After Action Summary. Fragment Designation: Null Zolric FR03. Theater: Veritas 9. Alias: The Silent Sovereign. Action: Pacification and Reconstruction. Combatants: 42 million estimated. Casualties: 847,000 purged during pacification. Liberated: 41.2 million. Status: Designated Silent Dominion Alpha. Cult of Perfect Order established. Within a week, the reconstruction lattice propagated through the hive. Citizens working in coordinated cells under perfect order protocols. The hive cities were rebuilt not by servitors or forced labor, but by willing hands. The Crimson Ecclesiarchy and Radiant Penitents dissolved, their members integrated into a single structure, the Silent Ministorum. They still prayed to the Emperor, but their prayers were quiet, functional, free from the hysteria that had drowned their world in blood. Helena Doraine stood in the reconstructed Cathedral Sanctus, now renamed the Hall of Silent Devotion. Before her, citizens knelt, not in fearful supplication, but in contemplative stillness. Ainz's hololithic projection appeared beside her. "You did not flee. Why?" Helena did not look at him. "Because I'm an inquisitor. My duty is to the Emperor, not to my comfort." She paused. "And because you were right. This world was dying. Whatever you are, you stopped that. At a cost. Everything has a cost." She finally turned. "What will Terra say when they learn of this? They will call me heretic, Xenos, abomination." Ainz's eye flames flickered. "Let them. Every world I save is a world that questions whether their way is the only way. You're starting a war." "No." Ainz's projection began to fade. "I'm ending one, the war between faith and survival. And I will ensure survival wins." From Terra, the message arrived 3 months later. Imperial Decree. Veritas 9. Status: Quarantine Alpha Omega. Threat Classification: Theological. Designation: The Silent Sovereign. Recommendation: Observe. Prepare sanctions. Ecclesiarchy. Demand: Immediate exterminatus. High Lord's Council. Divided. But it was too late, because the Silent Ministorum had already begun transmitting. Not through the warp, through tight beam relays, through trader networks, through whispered rumors carried by rogue traders and refugees. The message was simple. There is a place where the Emperor's children do not kill each other. There is a voice that speaks without demanding. There is silence, and in silence there is peace. And across Nihilus, in 100 hive worlds drowning in faith war, people began to listen. In Nazarick, Albedo presented the final assessment. "Veritas 9 is secure, my lord. The Silent Sovereign title has taken root. 23 nearby systems have requested contact." Ainz sat upon his throne, fingers steepled. 23. And how many of those requests came from ecclesiarchy authorities. None. All civilian populations. They've heard of a ruler who doesn't demand, they bleed. Bowed for him. Ainz was quiet for a long moment. I never wanted to be called sovereign. Satoru Suzuki was a salaryman. Ainz Ooal Gaun was a guild leader. And now, he stood. Now I'm a theological problem. You are salvation, Albedo said firmly. No. Ainz looked out at the projection of Veritas 9. Peaceful, productive, silent. I'm simply practical. And in a galaxy drunk on faith, practicality looks like something greater. Far away in the warp, the chaos entities stirred. They had felt worlds slip from their grasp before, but never like this. Never with such finality. Veritas 9 was not dead. It was not corrupted. It was simply absent. A hole in the fabric of belief where once there had been screaming devotion. And that hole was spreading. Tzinch peered through 1,000 eyes and saw static. Where futures should branch, there was only a single line. Where possibility should bloom, there was certainty. The Silent One, the architect whispered, is writing a new story, and we are not in it. The ecclesiarchy called it the Purification Fleet. 40 warships, 20,000 battle sisters, 3 Grey Knight strike forces, and at its head, Cardinal Admiral Theosius the Unyielding. A man who had burned 17 worlds in the Emperor's name and considered it mercy. Their target, Veritas 9. Their mission, Exterminatus of the Silent Dominion. Theosius stood on the bridge of the divine wrath, his power armor gleaming with purity seals. Behind him, his command council, hardened officers who had fought chaos, Xenos, and heresy for decades, reviewed tactical displays. Theological assessment, Theosius demanded. Inquisitor Cardinal Vale, representing the Ordo Hereticus, stepped forward. Her augmetic eye whirred as she accessed data slates. The entity designates itself Ainz Ooal Gaun, no match in Xenos catalogues, no demonic signature, no warp presence whatsoever. She paused. It is an absence, a void where power signatures should register. Heresy. Worse. Vale's expression hardened. It offers function over faith, logic over liturgy. The populations it liberates cease all conflict, increase productivity by 847%, and report— the word tasted like poison. Contentment. They are happy without the Emperor's struggle. Theosius's gauntleted fist slammed the tactical table. Happiness without trial is damnation. The Emperor teaches through suffering. This silent sovereign is the greatest heresy. It offers peace. And they accept it, Vale added quietly. 23 worlds have requested contact. Veritas 9's transmissions spread like plague. There is kilance and insolence, peace. Then we will give them the Emperor's answer. Theosius turned to his fleet master. Prepare cyclonic torpedoes. We burn Veritas 9 to bedrock. Let ash be their peace. The fleet translated into real space at the edge of Veritas 9's system, and the warp stopped. Not like before. This was absolute. Navigators screamed as their third eyes saw nothing. Astropaths collapsed, their connection to the Astronomicon severed. Even the ship's Geller fields flickered, confused by the absence of anything to repel. What is this? Theosius roared. His sensorium officer's voice trembled. My lord, the warp within this system. It's not turbulent. It's not calm. It's gone, as if reality itself has been rewritten. On the view screen, Veritas 9 hung in perfect stillness. No orbital debris, no defense platforms, no signs of preparation for war. Just a planet, silent and watching. Then from the planet's surface, a transmission. Not vox, not psychic. It simply appeared in every bridge, every ready room, every warrior's mind. Ainz Ooal's voice, calm as entropy. You have come to destroy what you do not understand. I expected this. The Imperium destroys what it fears. A pause. But I will not allow you to harm those under my protection. Turn back. This is your only warning. Theosius laughed, a harsh, mechanical sound. Threats from a Xenos pretender. Battle Sisters, prepare for planetary assault. Grey Knights, ready sanctification rites. We will... The fleet's weapons went dark. Not damaged, not disabled, simply inert. Every plasma cannon, every macro battery, every torpedo tube registered as unable to achieve hostile function. Impossible! The gunnery master frantically worked his controls. The weapons are functional, but the ship refuses to classify Veritas 9 as a valid target. Because Demiurge, from orbit, had introduced a new parameter into local reality, Veritas 9 cannot be harmed by those who claim to serve its protection, and the Imperium claimed to serve humanity's protection. The logical paradox locked every weapon system. Theosius's face purpled with rage. Then we board. Sisters of battle, drop pods, Grey Knights, teleportarium assault. We will Herclitans this world with bolter and blade. The assault began. Thousands of drop pods screamed toward Veritas 9's surface. Grey Knights materialized in silver flashes within the silent Ministerum's halls. Battle Sisters, chanting litanies of hate, stormed the reconstruction zones. They found no resistance. The citizens of Veritas 9 simply stopped what they were doing and observed. Workers put down tools. The silent Ministerum's adherents stood in their halls, hands folded, watching the Imperium's warriors with calm curiosity. Sister Superior Constantia led her squad through the hall of silent devotion, bolters raised. Heretics! Where is your false master? A former archdeacon, now simply called Keeper Varn, stepped forward. His face bore the scars of his former fanaticism, but his eyes were clear. He is here. He is always here, as the Emperor is always watching. He gestured around, but we do not need him to speak to know his will. Blasphemy! Constantia raised her bolt pistol. The trigger would not pull. Not jammed, unwilling. The weapon recognized its target as human, faithful in their own way, and non-hostile. Because Ainz had refined the protection, weapons of humanity cannot harm those who serve humanity's survival. Constantia stared at her pistol in horror. What witchcraft? Not witchcraft. Ainz's voice echoed through the hall, and he materialized, not threatening, simply present. Correction. Your weapons exist to protect humanity. These people are human. Therefore, your weapons will not fire. He tilted his skull. Logic, pure and absolute. From the shadows, Albedo and Demiurge observed. Shalter lounged against a pillar, smiling at the sisters' confusion. This is impossible. Constantia's squad raised their bolters, pulled triggers. Nothing. Not even a click. The Emperor's weapons serve the Emperor's purpose. Ainz finished. And his purpose is humanity's survival, not its destruction over theological differences. He gestured to Varn. This man still prays to your Emperor. Still believes. He simply does so quietly. Does that warrant death? Constantia's certainty wavered. The Emperor demands faith. Yes, Ainz stepped closer. But does he demand you kill those who honor him differently? Or is that merely what you have been taught? He raised one skeletal hand. I offer you the same choice I offered them. Serve efficiently, or continue this cycle of holy violence. Across the planet, the scene repeated. Grey Knights found themselves unable to activate force weapons against non-hostile humans. Battle Sisters' flamers refused to ignite when aimed at the faithful. Even orbital bombardment calculations failed. The targeting cogitators returned errors. Target does not meet hostility parameters. Cardinal Admiral Theosius watched his crusade collapse in real time, not through defeat, through impossibility. This cannot be. He turned to Vale. Inquisitor, declare exterminatus. If we cannot fight, we burn it all. Vale's hands trembled over the Yanko. Activation runes. She had authorized world death before. But now, looking at the data, millions of humans, faithful in their way, living in peace. I cannot. The words tasted like ash. The Codex Imperia states exterminatus is for irredeemable corruption. This is order, heretical order. But she looked up at Theosius. They are loyal to humanity, to the Emperor's vision of survival, just not to our interpretation. Heresy! Theosius drew his power sword. It powered down the moment he pointed it at her, because she served humanity, and his weapon would not harm that service. Ainz's voice filled the divine wrath's bridge. Cardinal Admiral, your weapons are tools, not masters, and tools serve their function. In this case, humanity's protection. You cannot use humanity's tools to destroy humanity's peace. Theosius fell to his knees, the weight of existential paradox crushing him. The Emperor protects. Yes. Ainz's tone was almost gentle. And now so do I, the Ooal. Question is, can both be true? The standoff lasted 3 days. The purification fleet hung in orbit, weapons dark, troops unable to engage. Below, Veritas 9 continued its silent devotion. Prayers whispered, work completed, peace maintained. On the 3rd day, Inquisitor Cardinal Vale made her decision. She transmitted directly to Terra, unencrypted, for all to hear. Veritas 9 Theological Assessment revised. The Silent Sovereign, non-hostile to Imperium population, faithful, functional, non-aggressive, recommendation, quarantine, not extermination, threat level, philosophical, not martial. Conclusion: this is not heresy. This is evolution. The response from Terra was immediate and fractured. Ecclesiarchy. Supreme heretic finding. Vale declared traitor. High Lords Council. Motion to observe. 7-5 vote. Mechanicus delegation. Request formal contact. Inquisition. Ordos. Divided. No consensus. The Imperium, for the first time in millennia, could not agree on what constituted heresy. As the fleet prepared to withdraw, unable to fight, unwilling to negotiate, the warp around Veritas 9 shuddered. Not a storm, a rift. Space tore, and from the wound, silence. Absolute, physical silence that spread like a stain across real space. Wherever it touched, the warp retreated. Demons evaporated. Psychic phenomena ceased. The Astronomican's light faint in nihilus, dimmed further. Theosius stared at the growing void. What have you done?" Ainz's projection appeared on the bridge one final time. "I have shown you what true supreme power looks like. Not storm, not rage, not the warp's screaming chaos." His eye flames burned cold. Silence. Perfect. Absolute. Eternal. The rift stabilized, a permanent scar across reality. Where once warp and materium blended, now there was only separation. "I name it the Silence Rift." Ainz gestured to the phenomenon. "Let it be a reminder. There are forces beyond your Emperor and your Chaos entities. Forces that require neither faith nor emotion." He paused. "And I am one of them." The fleet withdrew, not in defeat, in confusion, in fear, in the terrible understanding that the galaxy had changed and the Imperium's certainty had shattered. Fragment designation, Null Xeric FR04. Event, The False Dawn. Location, Veritas 9 System. Casualties, 0 combat. Paradox phenomenon. Silence, rift established. Imperial status, theological crisis. Recommendation, data corrupted. In Nazarick, Ainz sat upon his throne, watching the Silence Rift pulse with non-energy. Albedo approached. "My lord, the Imperium is fracturing. Half call for your destruction, half call for understanding." "Good." Ainz's fingers drummed on the armrest. "Division means thought. Thought means they're questioning. And when the faithful begin to question," he stood, "they stop being faithful and start being aware." "The Chaos entities will respond," Demiurge noted. "You've created a space where they cannot exist. Let them try." Ainz gazed out at the void that was not. "I have proven that reality can be rewritten, that authority can be designed. The age of faith is ending." He turned to his guardians. "The age of function has begun." Far away, in the depths of the warp, the 4 Chaos entities gathered, a rare occurrence. They looked upon the Silence Rift and felt something they had not experienced since their birth: uncertainty. Tzench spoke first. "He is not chaos. He is not order as we understand it. He is an axiom, a mathematical proof made flesh." Khorne growled. "Can we kill it?" "No." Nurgle's voice bubbled. "Because it is already dead, and the dead do not fear death." Slanesh, quietest of all, whispered, "He is building a universe without sensation. Without us." The 4 entities turned their gaze to the Materium, where 2 lights now burned, the Astronomican's fading gold, and the Silence Rift's absolute black. The galaxy had 2 sovereigns now, and only one promised peace. The distress beacon came from Kolhar's reach, a frontier agri-world on the edge of the Silence Rift. It lasted 3 seconds before the Silence Edge occluded it. But 3 seconds was enough. Kolhar's reach emergency broadcast. Tyranid Hive fleet detected. Estimated bioforms, 10 billion plus. Planetary defense overwhelmed. Request immediate evacuation. Status, signal lost. In Nazarick, Demiurge presented the data to Ainz with clinical precision. "My lord, a Tyranid splinter fleet has emerged from the galactic void. They are consuming Kolhar's reach. 12 million human colonists." Ainz observed the tactical display. Crimson markers indicated Tyranid swarm density. It was absolute. The entire planet crawled with Xenos bioforms. Synapse creatures coordinating the feast. "The Imperium's response?" Ainz asked. "None expected. The sector fleet is weeks away. By then, only stripped bedrock will remain. Demiurge adjusted his spectacles. Standard Tyranid consumption protocol. Albedo stood at Ainz's side. Shall we intervene, my lord? These creatures have no capacity for negotiation, no political value. They are simply hunger. Ainz was silent, skeletal fingers drumming on his throne's armrest. In Yggdrasil, he had faced countless mindless enemies, raid bosses, dungeon monsters, PvE challenges. But those were game mechanics. This was different. This was extermination as a natural process. Demiurge, Ainz said slowly, you've been studying this universe's properties. How do world items function here? Demiurge's eyes gleamed. Ah, you wish to test our capabilities against a threat that cannot be reasoned with. He produced a data slate. Preliminary analysis suggests world items operate as reality anchors. They impose Yggdrasil's laws over local physics. In theory is insufficient. Ainz stood. I will go personally. If Nazarick is to exist in this galaxy, we must understand our true limits. He turned to Albedo. Prepare a transport and retrieve Longinus from the vault. Albedo's expression shifted. Surprise, then concern. My lord, Longinus is a weapon-class world item. Its designation is absolute deletion of target entity. If deployed incorrectly, I am aware. Ainz's eye flames burned steady. That is precisely why I must test it myself. Kolhar's reach was dying in real time. The once verdant fields were now rivers of organic slurry, digestion pools where Tyranid bioforms processed biomass. Ripper swarms moved like living carpets across the surface. Carnifexes smashed through hab blocks, harvesting fleeing civilians. In the sky, hive ships pulsed with alien life. Spore chimneys belching clouds of colonization organisms. The planet would be dead in 48 hours. Ainz's vessel, a sleek Nazarick voidcraft concealed by perfect silence field, entered low orbit undetected. The voidcraft rode within a noospheric null envelope. Auspex returns collapsing to baseline noise. The Tyranid hive mind registered no threat. No psychic signature. No life signs worth consuming. Just absence. Ainz stood in the ship's observation deck, watching the swarm below. Beside him, Shaltear fidgeted with excitement. They're so busy, she giggled, like little ants devouring everything. Can I play with them, Ainz-sama? No. Ainz's tone was firm. Stand back. All of you. He turned to his guardians, Shaltear, Albedo, Demiurge. What I am about to do will serve as a benchmark. Observe carefully. From his inventory, Ainz withdrew a lance. Not ornate, not glowing. Just wrong. A spear that seemed to reject the concept of existing in 3 dimensions. Its shaft was impossibly thin, its point infinitely sharp. Looking at it caused a sensation like falling through geometry. Longinus, a world item of the highest stratum. Engineered for absolute entity deletion, a single use per cycle. A spear that refuses to exist in ordinary dimensions. Ainz had used it once before, in Yggdrasil's final days, to eliminate a world boss that threatened the guild. It had worked, frighteningly well. Target parameters, Ainz said aloud, more for his guardian's education than necessity. All Tyranid bioforms within a 50-kilometer radius of strike point. Exclusion, non-Tyranid organic matter. Activation phrase, nothingness consume. He raised Longinus and spoke. Nothingness consume. The lance unfolded. Not physically, conceptually. It became a vector of non-existence, a mathematical proof that the designated targets should not be. The spear did not fly. It simply was in the space where Tyranids existed. And then it was not. Neither were the Tyranids, 50 kilometers of swarming bioforms. Termagants, hormagaunts, warriors, carnifexes, even a hive tyrant coordinating the assault, simply ceased, not vaporized, not destroyed, erased. The ground where they had stood was untouched. The buildings they had been devouring remained intact. Even the humans they were in the process of consuming survived, suddenly alone, surrounded by nothing where death had stood. From orbit, the deletion appeared as a perfect circle of absence, a 50-kilometer void where the swarm simply was not anymore. The hive mind screamed, not in sound. Tyranids did not vocalize. But the psychic shriek of sudden, inexplicable loss reverberated through the synaptic network. Billions of bioforms had their genetic connection to the fleet severed, not through death, through cessation of having ever arrived. Longinus had not killed them. It had retroactively negated their presence. In the observation deck, Demiurge's stylus moved frantically across his ledger. Fascinating. The world item didn't interact with local physics. It overrode them. The Tyranids didn't die. They were redacted from the causal chain. Albedo stared at the circle of nothing. My lord, if this weapon works here, could it not? Yes. Ainz lowered his hand, Longinus dissolving back into his inventory. It could, in theory, delete even a lesser manifested shard of a chaos power if properly constrained. Silence fell among the guardians. Shaltair broke it with a delighted laugh. Ainz Sama is amazing. You just erased billions of monsters. No. Ainz turned from the viewport. I erased 50 kilometers of monsters. The rest of the swarm remains. He gestured to the tactical display. Crimson markers still covered 90% of the planet. Longinus is powerful but limited. One activation, one area of effect. Against a Tyranid hive fleet. He did not need to finish. The implication was clear. Even a weapon of absolute deletion could not stop a swarm of this magnitude. Not alone. Then we withdraw, Albedo asked. No. Ainz's eye flames brightened. We adapt. Below, the Tyranid swarm reorganized. The hive mind, confused but driven by hunger, redirected bioforms toward the anomaly. Millions of creatures surged toward the deletion zone, compelled to investigate, to consume, to understand what had stolen their kin. Ainz watched them approach the circle of absence. When the first Tyranids crossed the threshold, they stopped, not killed, not blocked. They simply lost purpose. Within the area Longinus had touched, the hive mind's connection faltered. Synaptic imperatives became suggestions. Genetic drives became optional. The deletion zone persisted on a decaying timer. Hours stretching to days. A space where the hive mind's imperative could not take root. The Tyranids stood still, confused, no longer driven by the swarm. Residual effect, Demiurge noted. The deletion left a void of purpose. The hive mind cannot re-imprint on this space. Ainz tilted his skull thoughtfully. A Tyranid without the hive mind is just biomass. Directionless, harmless. An idea formed. Demiurge, calculate how many Longinus strikes would be needed to create a containment perimeter around the primary feeding zones. Demiurge's fingers flew across his data slate. 12 strikes, optimally placed. We do not have 12 world items of that class, my lord. No, but we have time. Ainz turned to Albedo. Order Mare to destabilize the tectonic plates beneath the swarm's core concentration. Drive them toward the deletion zones. Funnel them into spaces where the hive mind cannot function. Albedo bowed. At once. Over the next 6 hours, Nazarick enacted a slaughter of precision. Mare, from beneath the planet's crust, created seismic corridors, earthquake channels that herded tyrannid swarms like cattle. Cocytus led undead strike teams to eliminate synapse creatures, severing hive mind nodes. Shalter, finally unleashed, danced through warrior forms with Spewit Lance, not killing, but displacing, teleporting bioforms into the deletion zones where they lost all cohesion. And Ainz, at calculated intervals, used lesser reality-warping spells to expand the dead zones, spaces where the hive mind's voice became static. The Tyrannids, for all their adaptive evolution, could not adapt to having their purpose deleted. By the 30-hour mark, the swarm was fragmenting. Leaderless bioforms wandered aimlessly. Hive ships in orbit, sensing total compromise, began to withdraw. A rare retreat for a species that knew only consumption. The Imperium's relief fleet arrived at hour 42. A rim patrol detachment, only a single jump away, skirted the silence boundary. Navigators threading a narrow, non-empiric corridor. They found Kolhar's Reach standing. 12 million colonists alive. Infrastructure damaged but repairable. And scattered across the landscape, millions of tyrannid corpses. Inert. As if someone had simply turned off the swarm. The fleet commander, Lord Admiral Hesker, stared at the data in disbelief. This is impossible. Tyrannids don't retreat. They don't fail. A transmission appeared on his bridge, unencrypted, direct. Ainz Ooal Gaun's voice, calm and absolute. They failed because I designed their failure. The swarm is gone. The world is saved. You are welcome. Before Hesker could respond, the transmission cut. In orbit, Nazarick's voidcraft slipped into the silence rift and vanished. Kolhar's Reach after-action report. Fragment designation, Null Xeric FR05. Theater, Kolhar's Reach. Phenomenon, hive mind deletion zones confirmed. Tyrannid bioforms eliminated, 10 billion plus. Casualties, human, 1.8 million. Survivors, 10.2 million. Entity responsible, the Silent Sovereign. Imperial verdict, theological crisis deepens. In Nazarick, Ainz reviewed the operation with his guardians. World items function in this universe, he summarized, but they are finite. We have 11 remaining top-tier items. Each must be used with absolute precision. He looked at Demiurge. Begin cataloging targets worthy of such weapons. Demiurge bowed. Chaos entities, Necron overlords, the Tyrannid hive mind itself, perhaps. And, Ainz prompted, the Emperor of mankind. Demiurge's smile was razor-thin. If it becomes necessary. Ainz was quiet for a long moment. The Emperor is not our enemy. Not yet. Focus on existential threats. Understood, my lord. As the Guardians filed out, Albedo remained. My lord, you saved 12 million humans today. The Imperium will not thank you. They fear you more with each act of salvation. Good. Ainz's eye flames dimmed to embers. Fear breeds caution. Caution breeds thought. And when they think long enough... He turned to gaze at the stars beyond Nazarik's walls. They will realize that faith cannot save them, but function can. Far in the void, the tyrannid hive mind processed the loss. Not defeat, incomprehension. A prey world had been protected by something that made no biological sense. A force that deleted without consuming, saved without feeding. The hive mind adjusted its assessment. New designation. Silent one equals non-prey. A void. And in the warp, Tzeentch observed the aftermath. The tyrannids, creatures of pure biological determinism, had been removed from causality by a single entity. The architect of fate whispered to himself, "He does not merely change the future. He deletes possibilities I cannot predict." For the third time, Tzeentch saw his plans encounter a wall of silence. And for the third time, he had no answer. The warp was screaming, not the usual cacophony of chaos. This was different, older. A sound that predated the Four, predated the Eldar fall, perhaps predated reality itself. In Nazarik, every alarm activated simultaneously. Albedo burst into the throne room, uncharacteristically disheveled. "My lord, the warp at the Silence Rift's edge. It's tearing open, not a storm, something worse." Ainz stood from his throne, eye flames blazing. "Show me." The scrying mirror activated, displaying the boundary where the Silence Rift met conventional real space. There, space itself was bleeding. Literally. Crimson light seeped from cracks in reality, and with it came a sound that made even undead shudder. Chains. Infinite chains. Dragging something through the veil. Demiurge arrived moments later, his usual composure strained. "My lord, this signature, it matches fragmented data we recovered from the Grey Knight's memories. They had a designation for it." He consulted his data slate with trembling hands. Codex reference, Primordial Anathema, common name. He looked up. The Scarlet King. The name hung in the air like a curse. "A chaos power?" Ainz asked. "No." Demiurge's voice was quieter than usual. "Something that existed before the concept of such beings, before the warp learned to think. A precondition, the pain that teaches the universe to feel." Shaltair appeared, for once not playful. "Ainz Sama, I can taste it from here. It's like hunger and rage and sorrow all compressed into one screaming thing." The scrying mirror cracked, not from magical feedback, from the sheer presence bleeding through the observation spell. Ainz dismissed the scrying and turned to his guardians. "Gather everyone. Full war council. If this entity breaches into real space near the Silence Rift, it will unmake everything we've built." He paused, "and perhaps everything beyond." In the warp, the Chaos entities convened for the second time in eons. They stood at the edge of the Crimson Chain fragment, a wound in their domain that pulsed with wrongness. None of them claimed it. None of them could control it. Horn spoke first, voice grinding like tectonic plates. "The chains grow tighter. It tries to pull itself through, using the Silent One's rift as an anchor." "Why?" Nurgle's voice bubbled. "The Scarlet King sleeps beyond the veil. It should not want to wake. Waking means pain, and even pain incarnate fears its own agony. Unless, Tzeentch whispered, it senses opportunity. The Silent One has created a space where we cannot exist. Perhaps the king thinks it can exist there instead. Slaanesh, quietest of all, added, or perhaps it simply hungers for the one thing it has never tasted. Silence. The four looked at each other, ancient enemies united by a singular terror. Do we aid the pools, skeleton? Khorne asked, the words foreign in his throat. We do nothing, Tzeentch decided. Let them fight. If the Silent One wins, the king remains bound. If the king wins, the architect smiled without joy, then we inherit a universe too broken for even us to inhabit. Either way, we observe. At the Crimson Chain fragment, Nazarick deployed in full strength. Cocytus commanded the forward positions. Undead legions arrayed in perfect formations. Crystalline warriors that would not break, could not fear. Mare and Aura worked in tandem, reshaping the planetary crust around the breach point, creating geometric channels to funnel whatever emerged. Shalter stood ready, Spuit lance gleaming, crimson armor reflecting the red light seeping from the wound, and at the center, Ainz Ooal gown. Staff in hand, every world item in Nazarick's treasury on standby. Demiurge approached. My lord, tactical assessment. If this entity is truly pre-warp, our usual methods may prove insufficient. No. Ainz's gaze never left the fragment. But we have one advantage. This creature, whatever it is, exists in a state of perpetual suffering. It is pain given form. He turned to Demiurge. And I am death given thought. Pain ends when death arrives. Perhaps that is enough. The fragment split open. Not gradually. Not with warning. One moment, space was bleeding. The next it was open. A mouth screaming red light and ancient hunger. From the wound emerged chains. Crimson. Burning. Wrapped around something that struggled against its own existence. A form took shape. Not humanoid, not demonic. Something between concept and flesh. A mass of contradictions. It had eyes that wept blood. Mouths that screamed silence. Limbs that reached in directions that did not exist. And chains. So many chains. Wrapped around every part of its being, as if reality itself tried to hold it back. The Scarlet King. Fragment manifestation. Not the true entity. Just a shard. A splinter of the whole. But even a splinter of infinity is infinite. It spoke, not in words, in sensation, pain, hunger, existence, ending. Why? The psychic pressure alone shattered 3 continents' worth of stone. The undead legions held. Corpses cannot go mad. But the air itself began to hurt. Ainz raised one hand. Guardians, full defensive protocol. Do not engage until I give the word. He stepped forward. Alone. The Scarlet King's fragment turned its countless eyes toward him, and for a moment, just a moment, the screaming stopped. It recognized something. You. Not life. Not death. What? Ainz's voice cut through the psychic maelstrom. I am the end you seek, the cessation of all suffering. You are pain incarnate, trapped in chains of your own existence. He planted his staff. I am the one who can make it stop. Lie. All lie. Nothing stops. Pain eternal. No. Ainz's eye flames burned cold. Pain is not eternal. It only feels that way because you have forgotten what silence means. The king's fragment lunged, not physically, conceptually. It tried to impose its nature onto Ainz, to make him understand suffering at a level beyond comprehension. The perfect silence field activated. The king's pain wave struck the field and stopped, not reflected, not absorbed, simply ceased to propagate. For the first time since its existence began, the Scarlet King encountered something that would not suffer. Impossible. You should hurt. Why no hurt? Because I am already dead. Ainz raised his staff. And the dead are beyond your reach. The battle that followed was not a battle in any conventional sense. The king's fragment lashed out with chains of suffering, each link a compressed universe of agony. They struck Nazaric's forces and found nothing. Undead do not feel pain. Constructs do not suffer. Even the Guardians, protected by layers of death magic, remained untouched. The king tried to rewrite reality, to make existence itself hurt. But the perfect silence field rejected the premise. Within Ainz's domain, pain was not a universal constant. It was an optional parameter, and Ainz had set it to 0. Frustrated, confused, the fragment began to collapse inward. Its chains tightened, pulling at its own essence, trying to retreat back through the veil. No, Ainz said quietly. You came here seeking release. Let me give it to you. He reached into his inventory and withdrew a ring. Black as the space between stars. A world item whose designation the scrying mirror refused to display. He spoke quietly. Eternal slumber. Light did not bloom. Sound did not die. The scrying feeds tore to static. Even Nazaric's inner sensors went blind, as if the universe had closed its eyes out of courtesy. For 13 heartbeats, nothing existed but a pressure beyond even pressure itself. When vision returned, the crimson chain fragment was sealed. No ripple, no residue. Just repaired space and drifting motes the color of old blood. No one could say what had happened inside those 13 beats. Not Demiurge's ledgers, not Mare's runes, not Ainz himself. The fragment was gone. The screaming had stopped. But whether through destruction, dispersal, or something else entirely, no record could confirm. Demiurge approached slowly, stylus forgotten. My lord, what happened? I don't know. Ainz's voice was quiet, honest. The world item activated. The fragment ceased. But the mechanism, he paused. Even I could not observe it. If a restricted class world item was invoked, Demiurge said carefully, it could explain a clean seal without residue. But we did not see it happen, my lord. Then record only what we know. It stopped. Ainz turned to face his guardians. The Scarlet King's fragment encountered Nazaric, and when the encounter ended, the fragment was gone. Will it return? Ainz gazed at the sealed space. That was a splinter. The true king still exists beyond the veil. Whether this splinter was a destroyed, sealed, or something else. He shook his commenseur head. I cannot say. In the warp, the chaos entities watched in stunned silence. The Scarlet King's fragment, something they feared more than each other, had simply ceased. Not defeated in battle. Not sealed through ritual. Just gone. Tzeentch's voices all spoke at once. What did the skeleton do? I saw nothing. I predicted nothing. It simply ended. Is that not what a supreme being should do? Nurgle mused. Give peace to the suffering? He's not that, Horn growled. He's something worse. He's a solution we don't understand. He offers something we never could, Slaanesh whispered. An ending we cannot comprehend. The four retreated deeper into their realms, each contemplating the same terrifying question. If he can make the Scarlet King's fragment cease without explanation, what could he do to us? In Nazarick, the Guardians gathered for debriefing. 2 world items expended, Albedo reported. Longinus on the Tyranids, the unnamed ring on that. 10 top-tier items remain. Noted, Ainz said. Catalogue them carefully. We've learned today that this universe contains threats that predate even the Chaos entities. He stood. And we've learned that our power, while effective, leaves questions even we cannot answer. But effective, Demiurge added. We've now resolved conflicts with Imperium doctrine, Tyranid swarms, and a primordial entity. Resolved, yes. Ainz's tone was measured, but not always understood. The Scarlet King fragment is gone, but I cannot explain how or why the method worked. He walked to the viewport. We are powerful, but we are not omniscient. And what comes next? Shaltair asked. Ainz was silent for a long moment. The galaxy knows we exist. The silent sovereign, the one who offers peace without hope, order without faith, and death without pain. He turned to face them. What comes next is the hardest part, living up to that title. Fragment designation, Null Xeric FR06. Event, Crimson Chain Manifestation. Entity, redacted, primordial class. Outcome, fragment dispersed. Method, unknown. Casualties, 0. Scarlet King. Status, primary form remains sealed. Assessment, silent sovereign confirms reality editing capacity. Imperial response, no consensus. Mechanicus analysis, technology or theology. Inquisition verdict, yes. Across the galaxy, in 1,000 hive worlds, in forge temples and war-torn systems, people whispered a new saying. Not against the Emperor, not replacing him, but alongside him. In silence, there is peace. In death, there is rest. In the Emperor's light, we fight. In the Silent One's shadow, we sleep. 2 guardians for one humanity. May both watch eternal. The Ecclesiarchy tried to suppress it. The Inquisition tried to burn it out. But you cannot kill words that offer comfort, and you cannot stop the weary from seeking silence after 10,000 years of screaming. Ainz Ooal Gaun, once Satoru Suzuki, then overlord of Nazarick, now the silent sovereign, sat upon his throne and contemplated the weight of leadership. He had not sought it, had not wanted it. But in a universe where belief shaped reality, he had offered something radical. Trust in function. Stillness through silence. Salvation without suffering. And the galaxy, broken and bleeding, had listened. Albedo, he said quietly. My lord? Send a message to Rimuru Tempest. My lord? Tell him the Silent Dominion is established, and I would like to discuss where we go from here. Because in the darkness between stars, 2 lights now burned. The Astronomicon, golden, fading, fueled by sacrifice, and the Silence Rift, silver, growing, fueled by nothing at all. The age of the screaming galaxy was ending. The age of the silent sovereign had begun.